Welcome everyone to our LALINOA conversation for today. Today, I have the honor of having a LALINOA or a conversation with the Australian High Commissioner, Mr. Brek Batley. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Wonderful to be here with you again after a great Christmas period, and also a super early start to the year. So many things happening.
A lot has happened, and one of those things is the reason why we are having this conversation. Australia and Tonga have agreed to an 85 million Australian dollars, which is 125 million paanga budget support program over the next 4 years to support a stronger economy and national budget. This is a massive financial commitment from Australia. My first question may seem a simple one, but many in the public will be wondering the same thing. In simple terms, what does the budget support means for the people of Tonga?
Well, it is big news. Lala. It's our biggest ever investment with Tonga. So I think the first thing I would say to that is this is about a closer partnership between Tonga and Australia. And I want all your listeners to know that our relationship just has been going from strength to strength. And that's based on strategic trust, everything from the way we look at the economy and the region together, the region's security together. You know, that sense of close partnership allows us to do things like that, like this big investment. The most important thing is that this will help better services for the people of Tonga. So this extra direct financing into the budget, the government can use as they wish, but we would expect it will boost healthcare. It will help with education, including in the outer islands. It will help, the government can put it to social infrastructure. So there's all the services that this will help. The other thing is that this will also help what we call better governance. Or better administration by the government, because it's got triggers or reforms in there that have to be met for the money to flow. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But the other one for everyone to know is that this sort of large-scale financing is about maintaining economic stability and building economic resilience. So when the next time there's a big cyclone here, there's the fiscal space to deal with some of these issues. I think it's just really important that as Tonga's gone through a really tough 5-year period, the next 5-year period is also difficult. So this money is about us working even closer together and us backing each other as close partners. And I hope everyone from Vavau to Tongatapu sees that closeness and warmth in our partnership.
I note that from the joint media release that the funds will be provided based on performance against a jointly determined policy reform priority, including those identified in the joint priority reform matrix. Support is also based on continued prudent fiscal or wise financial management by the government of Tonga. The question is, for the non-government listeners in my audience, what are some of the priorities and performance objectives in the joint policy reform matrix?
Yeah, this is really important. Just for context for your listeners, the Joint Policy Reform Matrix Group has been around for more than a decade. So this is where the big partners of Tonga, Australia, New Zealand, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, the European Union, they're the members. We come together and we work with the government on reforms, on opportunities to improve public administration, to improve the private sector environment. So this group gets together, and together with government, they determine what should be improved. And there's 3 focus areas. And the money that Australia's provided, this annual support, it has to go through the joint policy reform priorities. These will be part of it. These will be triggers or milestones. So the three areas that they focus on are strengthening public administration. So what does that mean in practice? Well, as one example, there was the electronic tax register system that people might see in shops. So when you go and buy a Coke or you go and buy your groceries, you hopefully should be getting a receipt. You should be going through the electronic system there. That was a reform from the JPRM in Tonga. And that tax, that VAT tax, is 50% of Tonga's revenue collection.
Wow.
So, and it's had an increase of 15% in the last year or so. So, first of all, make sure everyone gets a receipt when they go shopping, because a little bit of that money goes to the government and helps with education and health and roads and all of those things. So insist on a receipt. But that's an example of strengthening public administration. Another is policies on fraud, policies on combating sexual abuse or in the workplace, in the public service. The public service is the biggest employer in Tonga. So some of these policies are really important, and they set the example for private sector and elsewhere. I would just say that there's other areas that the JPRM focuses on, like consumer protection. So there'll be reforms in there that make it better when you go shopping and you're buying products, that the quality is more consistent. There's no price overpricing. These sorts of regulations will be part of the consideration. The other one is on private sector enabling support. So the first one's strengthening public administration. Second one's strengthening private sector enabling support. So how does the government make regulations better for businesses? And I know some of the things that are being looked at the moment are on tax exemptions in tourism or in agriculture. And how do you make it more attractive for businesses to grow? And the final one, the third one, is on disaster resilience. So, what are some of the policies and settings and structures that we can help the government put in place before the disaster, because that saves money in the long run. So there's some of the areas that the Joint Policy Reform Matrix focuses on. It's not perfect, but it's a way that all of the big partners say to the government, all right, we agree that some of these things should be done. They're important for public administration, or they're important for businesses. We will give funding to you, but only if you meet these criteria, only if you meet some of those milestones.
You might have already just answered the next question by that last sentence, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. How does Australia hold the government of Tonga to account for performance of those objectives? Yeah.
Well, I should also add that there's two sets of criteria that Australia will have for this $85 million. One is making sure those joint policy reform matrix priorities are implemented, and the second is our own bilaterally agreed or agreed between just Australia and Tonga. And one example of that is on social protection. Making sure, for example, one of the conversations we're having with government at the moment is around the retirement age and bringing it down. I think it's from 70 to 65. I mean, the average, or 68 to 65, the average lifespan in Tonga is around 70. So how do you, and the retirement age is 60.
Yeah.
So when people get their pensions, you want to make sure that it's being provided at the right time in someone's life so that they can use the money and it can be reinvested in the economy. So that's one of the reforms, for example, that we're doing bilaterally with the Tongan government. But to your question, we have 6 monthly meetings with the government and with some of those other partners, and we go through those reforms, and we make judgments together on whether they've been met. There's also we have conversations all the time with the Tongan government. We're very close to all the ministers and ministries, and we have advisors. So one of the things that was really important was we did a national assessment of the government systems here, and they've been. It's generally Tonga's systems are quite good, and certainly comparing to the region, they're quite good. But there were a few requirements. We had to put in some advisors in some of the ministries to make sure procurement and some of these areas we work together on, and there are improvements on. But the systems are good. So we work together when it comes to the budget each year, which we're coming up to, of course. We'll be looking closely at that with the government and discussing that with them too.
How does Australia hold the government of Tonga to account for prudent fiscal or wise financial management?
Well, as I say, we work really closely with the government all year long, and so this financing is about making sure that the government continues on a good economic growth path. And let me say, there's been good momentum. The government's been doing a good job. I mean, you think of the last 5 years, COVID-19, global inflationary pressures, then the Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai disaster, which wiped out 1/5 of the country's GDP in one natural disaster. But the government's got back into positive economic growth. I know the IMF and other institutions say that it won't be big growth over the next 5 years. It's set at about 1%, or they're estimating around 1%. So that's not a lot. So the next 5 years are going to be really tough, particularly with the debt repayments back to the Exim Bank. But the momentum is, as I say, the momentum has been good. There's a new anti-corruption commissioner that's been put in place. There's a new public financial management roadmap. There's been, good economic signs in various parts of the economy. So, these are important reasons why Australia has been supporting Tonga, because there's good momentum on the Tongan government side as well. But we want to see more of that.
Yes.
And that's what this financing, when we work collaboratively, the Prime Minister, of course, said in the National Development Summit only 2 weeks ago that he wanted, the country needs breathing space. After all these cyclones and disasters, it needs breathing space to grow, and that's what this financing will help with. And, as I say, the government's also been doing a great job on the debt, with a debt management strategy. So there's lots of good signs.
Your Excellency, the next question, the context of the next question is a bit long, so I would like, if you ask you to bear with me as I read through it. This funding builds on many years of direct budget support by Australia to the government of Tonga that is separate from Australia's annual development and aid budget to Tonga. I understand that there is some criticism in development circles around the efficiency of budget support, with the donors having little say or control over how budgets are then distributed by the government, unlike they do with the development funds. The Prime Minister, Dr. Eke, is even quoted as saying, budget support allows us to be in the driver's seat and maintain our sovereignty as we navigate a path towards economic resilience, which to me implies that the government has ultimate freedom to distribute funding as they see fit. Considering this, in the context of how many in the public observe how the government allocates funds, and one good example is that of our roads, which I'm sure you're familiar with, as you would have used it on your way here. They are in terrible conditions and have been for many years throughout all the years of budget support provided by Australia. The question is, with there being some very obvious areas of development in Tonga, such as our road, was there any consideration by the Australian government to providing more direct funding support to these initiatives through development funding rather than general budget support?
Well, you're spot on, Lala. This is general budget support, and the government is in the driver's seat. So that means that they get to decide where the funding is allocated to. I know in your question you also said that there's criticism that this is inefficient donor or funding. I would argue the exact opposite. From our point of view, especially when we would look at growing a partnership, which is what we want to do with Tonga, direct financing into another country's government systems is the biggest signal that we trust. We trust you. We trust your systems, okay, with a little extra additions here and there, and making with advisors and things. But we trust your systems, and we trust our partnership, where our partnership is headed. So it is efficient. It allows it instead of having multiple small projects, each with their own transaction costs for us, for the Australian High Commission, and for the government or each of the ministries. This is using the government systems efficiently, and it's backing the government's priorities. Because one of the things that Australia's new international development policy really emphasises is backing locally led solutions, locally led activities.
Yeah.
That means backing government and what they want to prioritise. And so Australia absolutely wants to do that. To your question around roads, yes, that's of course an issue. I know it's talked about a lot. This money can be used towards roads, and I guess we're in a democracy, and it's up to members of parliament, it's up to constituents to let the government know what are the priorities. Is it health? Is it education? Is it roads? Is it new infrastructure in the islands? Is it energy? There are limits to how much the government can do in any country, and there are limits also to how much Australia can support on. Our program, do you know, last year was the biggest ever in Australia's assistance to Tonga.
Wow.
It was 112 million Australian dollars that went to Tonga. It's usually a little less than that, but last year was a big year for various reasons. And let me assure you that a lot of that goes into infrastructure. So things like the new international wharf.
Yes.
Things like the new undersea cable for telecommunications resilience. The health part, 2 decades long health partnership. We're not giving that up, I promise you. I was just there this morning and we had an opening for a sterilisation unit, a waste management unit. Great partnership.
Which is much needed as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things, people won't talk about it over dinner, it's not sexy. Yeah. But you've got to get the foundations right in every ministry and in every service area, and that's one of them. Our energy work, our climate change work, so yes, we're doing lots of things with the Tongan government, and let me also reassure people that we're doing lots of things with civil society and NGO. We support the media in Tonga, we support Māori, we support various, the Women's Crisis Centre, we support all sorts of NGOs in Tonga, and that money is not changing. We're still backing NGOs and still supporting them. But just on roads, our big partnership, we have a $10 million partnership with Māori, just beginning. Some of the community development plans, if roads is on the community development plan, then our partnership with Māori might be able
if it isn't,
to address that.
Let's put it in the community plans.
Put it in there. That's one of the ways that Australian funding might help with roads. But the general budget support, this $85 million, we have to stick by our principles, and that is, the government is in the driver's seat, and they get to choose where it's spent, and we'll work with them on that.
Your Excellency, you were also quoted saying Australia recognized that Tonga is on a difficult path to fully recover from the economic shock of recent disaster, while also managing significant debt repayment until 2029. You also stated our assistance will directly support Tonga's leadership and national priorities. It reflects our partnership founded on mutual respect and a shared outlook on our regional security. You mentioned that the support is intended to help Tonga get back on track after recent disaster while managing its debt repayments, which, to my understanding, is largely to China or the bank in China. You conclude by emphasizing our regional security. The question is, why is Tonga's debt repayment to other countries so important in terms of our regional security?
Yeah, well, Tonga has been under high debt stress since 2017. And that's not a good place for any country to be in, because it signals internationally that, to foreign investors and the like, that, we've got to look closely at this economy. So, every country needs to think about its debt to GDP ratio. And Tonga has been doing a good job, let me say, has been doing a good job with a really strong debt management strategy that's been in place for a number of years. And they've been very, very disciplined, the government, former government on this.
I'm
but
glad
they
you
are,
said that.
yeah,
Former government.
Yeah, it's important. A lot of these issues go over multiple years.
Yeah.
So, but Tonga, of course, it's no secret. Tonga's at a critical juncture with those debt repayments, and then they're not small. I mean, we're talking 40 million top per year on average over the next 4 or 5 years. The health budget is 41 million top. The recurrent health budget, 41 million. The education budget annually is 49 million top. So, these are that's a large amount of money that Tonga has to repay each year back to the China Exim Bank. But that's what happens with debts. At some point, you have to repay them, and that's what Tonga's going through now. And I know that puts pressure. Any country that has significant debt repayments, that puts pressure in different areas. It means that the government can't spend as much as they want on health and education. It means they can't spend as much as they want on roads. It means that they can't spend as much as they want in the outer island. There's all sorts of implications to having to pay back that money. So, certainly Australia's support here is about making sure that Tonga has the fiscal space. I mean, we're focused on making sure the healthcare is not affected in any way. We're making sure that education and those areas are not impacted. And I should take this opportunity, I didn't mention it earlier, but there are some things in the support that we said we wouldn't. The money can't be used for. It can't be used to pay back those debts.
Yes.
Equally, it can't be used for catering or overtime or international travel. So some of those things are in the agreement because we want to make sure that it helps with productivity of the government, services of the government.
Lastly, Your Excellency, in acknowledgement to my Australian listeners, because this will be posted on social media, and given that all Australian government support to Tonga is funded by the Australian taxpayers, my last question for our LALINOA for today is, what does the budget support to Tonga mean to the people of Australia?
Well, this is part of something bigger, first of all. Australia's overseas development assistance just grew again. So we give $5.1 billion into globally. Most of that goes to Southeast Asia and the Pacific. 42%, 2.2 billion goes into the Pacific. And that's increased, again, as it did last year, 2024, it increased. So, I mean, Australia's being very clear that, you know, we want to support Pacific countries, and we're trying to increase our aid budget modestly, but every year it's growing slightly. And so Tonga's one of the beneficiaries of that. Other countries too have benefited from that increase in aid. For us, as I said at the start, you know, Australians, when they look at Australians are generous people. They want us to be, first of all, you know, helping with the development of our region. They want to make sure that countries are strong. No one wants to hear, I promise you, no Australians want to hear about any countries, any communities suffering in our region. So when Australians think of support to Tonga, they want to know also that it's part of something bigger. And that's why I said, when this is extra money that we're giving to Tonga, it's on top of our normal development program. And that's, as I said, because we do have shared values, we do have that trust, we do think along similar lines on security issues, and where we want our region to be in 5 years. So Australians also want to know that. They want to know that, that we see eye to eye on issues, because this is their money, their taxpayers' money, and they don't want it to go to areas where that isn't happening. Of course, there has to be development need. Of course, there has to be strong and effective national leadership, but there's also that sense of partnership, and how countries work together is really important. The other thing I'd say is that this is about backing Pacific solutions. That's what Australians and our government also wants to be doing more of. We don't want to come in and say this is how you should improve, or this is you know, if this is about the Tongan government is democratically elected. It has its priorities, it has good systems, and Australia wants to back that. Australia wants to support it. And so that's what direct financing does. The other one for us, which Australians, of course, are focused on, like every country, is value for money. And I know the Prime Minister here is also focused on accountability, transparency, efficiency,
compliance,
no public waste, which is music to our ears. And that's important to Australians, is that when our overseas aid program is directed to countries, and when it grows in countries, that they have assurance that the way that we do it, the way that the High Commission does it, is not wasting their money, and it's not, and it's looking at the most efficient ways to do it. And direct financing, with the conditions that are attached around policy reforms, is an efficient way for us to work as a close partner who's getting even closer.
You're right to see Mr. Brek Batley. Thank you for being here. I enjoyed the conversation. I'm hoping this conversation will give an insight on the budget support that Tonga is getting, especially the massive financial commitment from Australia to the government of Tonga. And I'm just thankful that I reached out and heard back from your people saying that you're available to have a conversation about the budget support and giving more information to the people.
I'm most disappointed with my people, Lala. I told them if he ever reaches out, don't take the call.
Don't take the call.
Oh, no.
Unless we're making a bet. We're making a bet on that.
No, I'm joking. Well, look, it was wonderful to talk. As I said, this is the biggest ever arrangement we've done with Tonga, and we're really pleased with it. And but if I can just add a couple of extra things that don't relate necessarily to this big investment. The first one is on our scholarships.
Oh, yes, please do.
It's that time of year.
Yes.
Where our scholarships program is open, and we have over 600 alumni.
Oh.
In Tonga that have studied in Australia under the Australian
600.
Awards program, and there'd be more when you add in all the defence scholars and agriculture scholars. But yeah, there's over 600. So we want to increase that.
Yes.
It's open. Please put in applications for all the students and young people out there that want to come and study in Australia under a scholarship, or study in Fiji at the University of South Pacific or Vanuatu. We've got options there. There's usually about 20, 25 spots each year at least that we do. And I know that there's awesome opportunities no matter what you're interested in, whether it's aviation, if it's education, if it's climate change, all of those areas are covered under the scholarships. And one fun fact, guess how many out of the 11 cabinet members of government have studied in Australia under a scholarship?
5. Guessing.
7.
7.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a long-term program that's really an important part of our partnership here, and I know that the next leaders of the country will also come through this program too. I think there's so I've been going to some of the schools. We have a Torres Strait Island exhibition in town at the moment, and it's our indigenous culture, the Torres Strait, and it's a mask exhibition.
Yes.
And we've been going to a couple of schools, and it's just been so much fun.
And how have the schools taken to seeing the mask and embracing the culture?
Yeah, the Torres Strait Islands are so similar in many ways to Tonga. It's a similar sort of geographic size as far as islands and the main island, although there's fewer islands there. Just the marine and seafaring nature of the culture, the music. So all of these things come to life when we talk about it with all the school students. And this exhibition is about masks. So that in Torres Strait Island culture, masks and totems are really a critical part of their expression, along with drumming. I don't know how you are on drums, Lala.
No, I'm not good at drums.
Yeah, well, come along.
Dancing to the drums as well. So, yeah.
We'll make sure we fit in some dancing for the next interview. The second thing I wanted to say was we have 2 jobs available at the Australian High Commission.
Yes, please.
And one is on agriculture and private sector development.
Nice.
So if anyone has a background in those, please come and apply.
There'll be a lot in Tonga if
it's only open for another few days.
Yeah.
It's on our website. And the second one is in GEDSI, or Gender Equality and Disability and Social Inclusion. So if you've got any experience...
I wore pink today to advertise the...
You still have to send in a CV, Lala. It's just, you don't get to an interview. I can't just walk in
with my pink shirt and say, I'm here for the gender equality job.
Yeah, well, that's a start, but you're going to need a few more qualifications, I think. So they're exciting to make sure. We've got new people coming into our team too.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I look forward for more conversation. Yeah.
Thank you, Lala, and thank you to everyone.
Malo. Thank you, and that was our program and our conversation, our LALINOA with the High Commissioner, Australian High Commissioner. Thank you for watching, and hope you guys have a beautiful day. Malo.